Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. Welcome to a recollection of the 1969 Black Student Strike panel. Before we begin, we would like to read the Multicultural Student Center and the Black Cultural Center's land acknowledgement. The University of Wisconsin-Madison occupies Ho-Chunk land, a place their nation once called Dejope, since time immemorial. In an 1832 treaty, the Ho-Chunk were forced to cede this territory. Decades of ethnic cleansing followed when both the federal and state government repeatedly, but unsuccessfully, sought to forcibly remove the Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin. This history of colonization informs our shared future of collaboration and innovation. Today, UW-Madison respects the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation, along with the 11 other First Nations of Wisconsin. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths every day. Thank you for joining us to celebrate the Black History Month and the 50th anniversary of the 1969 Black Student Strike. My name is Shiloah Coley. I'm a third-year Chicago Posse Scholar here on campus. I'm studying journalism with certificates in studio art and African American studies, and I'm also the co-editor-in-chief of The Black Voice here on campus, along with Bree.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Breanna Taylor. I also serve as the co-editor-in-chief for The Black Voice. I am a proud people scholar. This is my 5th year. I'm studying Afro-American studies with an emphasis in art, and I am also completing my gender and women's studies certificate, as well as one of the co-chairs for Black History Month Planning Committee, and this is my lovely committee in the front here.
So today, it is our hope to commemorate the work of former students on campus who participated and organized the Black Student Strike. We'd like to thank the Black History Month Planning Committee, University Communications and Marketing, the Black Voice, the Black Cultural Center, the Multicultural Student Center, and University Archives.
This year's theme, Striking Black, an Unmatched Legacy, is inspired by history of this very campus. 50 years ago, in 1969, Black students held a strike and demanded that their needs be met. For some students, this meant forming what we now know as the Wisconsin Black Student Union to ensure that Black students across campus were connected and in community with one another. Those brave students gave 13 demands to the chancellor of the university and constantly held UW-Madison's leaders accountable to the empty promises they made. Their dedication, hard work, and sacrifice allowed students like us to have the Multicultural Student Center, the Black Cultural Center, the Afro-American Studies Department, and the endurance to continue this fight. While we continue to hold this university accountable to this day, we still remember the legacy our predecessors left for us to pass down.
We are excited to have some of the original organizers and participants of the 1969 student strike here with us today. First, Liberty Rashad, who I had the honor of interviewing. Liberty finished the spring semester of 1969 at UW-Madison, but did not return in the fall. Returning to New York, she continued as an activist, community organizer, and youth worker. She raised 3 sons while earning a bachelor's degree in psychology from Marymount University and a master's degree in education administration from Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. A retired educator, school director, and business owner, she owns and runs Huckleback Village, a bed and breakfast in the historic Tremé neighborhood of New Orleans.
Thank you.
And to the right of Miss Liberty, we have Wahid Rashad. Wahid did not return to UW-Madison for the fall 1969 semester. In 1978, he legally changed his name from Willie Edwards to Wahid Rashad due to his involvement in the Black Muslim movement. He raised 3 sons and became a drug rehabilitation counselor in New York City, and was later employed as a work release counselor for the Baltimore City Jail, then as a sales manager and trainer. Moving to Chicago, where he currently resides, he was employed in the mortgage industry as a broker, trainer, and group manager until his retirement.
And then to the left of Liberty, we have John Felder. John earned a bachelor's degree in economics history from UW-Madison in 1974. Early in his career, he taught freshman orientation classes at Hunter College in Manhattan and wrote art criticism for the New York Amsterdam News. He spent 23 years as an administrator with Teamsters Union Local 237 in New York. Retiring in 2008 as Director of Membership, he resides in Brooklyn, New York currently.
Last but certainly not least, we have Ms. Hazel Symonette. Hazel lost the fellowship that supported her PhD work as a result of her participation in the strikes. She went on to spend more than 50 years studying and working on the UW-Madison campus, earning 2 master's degrees at the university, as well as a doctorate in educational policy studies. She founded and directed the Excellence Through Diversity Institute and the Student Success Institute. She works part-time as a specialist in social justice and culturally responsive evaluation at the Wisconsin Center for Educational Achievement on campus. In 2014, she received a City-County Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Humanitarian Award for decades of work on campus and in the community.
So now we want to start with some of the questions. Just thank you all for being here today to start. So getting into the escalation of the strike and before the student strike actually happened, what was hardest about transitioning to campus as a black student in campus in the 1960s?
For me, the hardest thing was there was so little of us, so few of us, and adjusting to that and resisting the latent white superiority of some of the students on the dorm, you know. I came here through the Doyle program, the 5-year program, but I had put a lot of work into making sure that my scores were good, and they were. Mm-hmm. But the assumption was that I was this ignorant nigga coming up here, and I should be happy to be here. And so I had a lot of resentment on that score, and that was pretty much the only thing. I did find, and I must say, I found a lot of great people, white and black, that were students here. But the thing that I resented the most was that latent sense of superiority, that I was somehow inferior because I was black, you know, which I wasn't. You know, I felt I was equal to every student, and I was qualified to be here. So I came here with that. And then I was stunned that there was no black organization here. So those were the things initially that I responded to.
There also was a sense that, for some of us, that we were here on a humble. Those of us who were here on the 5-year program, as Willie just pointed out, his grades were very, very good. Most of our grades were very, very good. But the 5-year program was one that was to provide financial assistance to us. But there was almost an underlying theme that, well, you're not quite legitimate here. Now that might have come internally, but it also was subtly expressed externally as well.
And I think the fact that there were just so few of us, as Wahid pointed out, when we arrived in 1966, there were 90 African-American students total, all 4 years.
Freshmen, sophomores,
Yeah, graduates,
seniors.
everybody. Graduates.
Yeah.
So that, when you do the math, is like 1/4% of the 35,000 students. So we were just this minute little drop in the bucket. And that was really shocking, to be coming to such a large state university and find so few African-American students. Even though it was 1966, I, coming from New York City, expected to find more people of color here. There were 300 African students, which was interesting. But yet, to recruit African-American students, for some reason, that...
It was hard.
Yeah, that was difficult. So we had an immediate concern upon arrival at just the numbers, the sheer, disparity in numbers. So we immediately wanted to organize, and that's exactly what it took, and that's exactly what we did. We just started coming together, and we became a very tight-knit group because we were so small. We knew everybody, we were close to everybody, and we worked really hard together and really well together. There was a great sense of community among us. And so in some senses, it was a positive experience because we had this small, tight-knit group. We had the CP corner, as we called it, in the Rathskeller. I don't think it's still there. It's not exactly there, but it was a little corner, and that was our spot. And that's where we had every day kind of a refresher with each other, talking over the issues.
Classes,
And we met there a lot. So we had some fun as well as we had some hard work to be done, and that was kind of what it was like for us in 1966 and 67 and 68. Yeah, it went on.
Yeah.
But the numbers did grow to some extent, but not enough, as we see even today.
So to my understanding, the Black students had been meeting with administrators in the years leading up to the strike. Can you walk us through what some of those meetings looked like and the promises that had been made?
First of all, in 1967, we had started the organization in October of 66. I called a meeting. Liberty was there. Her brother, David, was there. It was about 13 of us, and it was in this building. And we created an organization called Concerned Black Students. That was the name, because we were concerned. So it's very simple. 1967, January, the second semester of our freshman year, we announced some demands, some issues. We started right out, boom. We're a Black student organization. We met right in front of the steps. We called the press, and we said, we're a Black student organization. We're concerned about the fact that there are very few of us here. We see a need for Black professors. We see a need for Black administrators. We see a need for a curriculum that speaks to us because we want to be educated. We want to be doers when we leave the University of Wisconsin. The University of Wisconsin has made a commitment to racial equality, and we feel that they have been slacking. So we started right off, boom, boom, boom. It proceeded in 1968, 67. We issued some demands. We met with the chancellor. They said, okay, this sounds good. And again, we used their truth. I am committed. And we said, you say you're committed, but what are you doing? This is pitiful. And that was the strength that we used. We didn't do a lot of screaming and shouting and bringing in guns and clubs. We just hit them over the head with the truth. And we just kept using the truth. And we had confidence with the truth. So they submitted, they said, yeah, we're going to do it. In 1968, we had the Proctor Committee, where Liberty and I, we stayed Thanksgiving, and we spoke to the proctor was a Black administrator that was brought in to keep us down, to keep us calm. But he was an ally of us. And there was 4 faculty members. So there was basically 5 of them and just 2 of us. But they conceded and they wrote it up and submitted it to the faculty. But it was the Board of Regents that the university felt a lot of pressure, that was pressuring them to hold it down. But every time we went to the university, they conceded to the demands, but then they reneged, And so those were some of the things that led up to 1969. We made constant efforts every year, submitting the same requests. And we went through the community. We talked in the community. We were on TV. We were in the newspapers and things like that. So we had people that understood what we were about and what we wanted.
We were bold, and we were also very, very principled. Earlier today, someone asked how we were able to sustain ourselves as students, being such a small minority, what propelled us to keep going forward. And it is indeed because we entered into this fight with principle, and because we also had a sense of self-confidence, and we knew that the time was right. This wasn't just particular to Wisconsin, of course. As you know, universities across the country were establishing African-American studies departments, which was one of our major demands. So we were very, very insistent upon it. We knew that this was our time. This is the place where we are, and this is where we will get certain things done. So we were principled, and we were also bold.
So now as Black students on campus, you all took it in your own hands to organize on your own and educate yourselves since the university wasn't doing that educating.
We did.
And you put together the Civil Rights Conference, the Black Revolution to What Ends. And that took place right before the strikes began. How did the messages of the speakers, how did that influence you and how you went about the strike?
In 1968, the university, when Dr. Martin Luther King passed away, they called me and they said, come to the next day. They called me that night. So I went, and there was all of these professors, and then there was the chancellor, and there was the administration there. And I started telling stories about the kids when I would go home to the south side of Chicago, were doing nothing. And the university had professed the need to do this and that. And we said we want more speakers, and we want to demand. They committed to bringing up speakers, but they allowed us to choose the speakers. So we brought up Gwendolyn Brooks, Muhammad Ali was up, Toni Morrison, Nathan Hare, who's a Black psychologist, and he did things on the West Coast. We had C.R.R. James, who was a revolutionary, speaking on the Haitian Revolution. So we had all these people, and they spoke to the general university community, you know, at various times. So that was a build-up, too. We had supporters being built up that way, you know, so.
And it was something that I think we did not just that one time, but we were able as a group to invite people here, and we had several times where we had the thinkers, the great thinkers of the day coming to help us think about how we could approach the work that we had to do here. And so we did a lot of self-education because the university didn't have an avenue for us. So we really worked hard, and I think that was a great assist in the sense that we knew that things were happening all around the country and people were doing it, and we were sharing ideas. We had lots of opportunity to talk with people who were doing similar kinds of things and making similar kind of demands in other universities. We traveled to other schools to see what was going on. So we educated ourselves because the university was in need of this work that we needed to do, but we needed help. And so we were able to get great thinkers to come here. We were very blessed.
Can I make one point? When you see in the demands, we said we want to be there, we want the choice. We felt qualified. It wasn't something that was being bold, but we felt qualified by virtue of the hours that we put in learning and thinking about these things and discussing these issues. So if you say, well, what type of department? We felt qualified to respond to that. We felt qualified to say what type of administrators, what type of professors, you know.
Absolutely.
When I arrived in 1968, thinking I was passing through. Be careful where you think you're passing through, honey children. Because 50 some odd years later, here I am. No regrets, but I entered and stood on the shoulders of the powerful work that Willie and Liberty had been doing at that time. I came as a grad student from a historically Black college, and so coming to this place was, as you might imagine, quite an experience. However, what Willie and Liberty are talking about with regard to, even though we were few, there was a camaraderie, a support, a sense of togetherness that helped sustain us. And the foundation was laid, and I benefited from the organizational work that they had done because they had been here since 1966. I came in 68, and stuff got moving real fast, real fast. And I came here to do a PhD in social psychology and was in the process of shifting from that department, which I came to feel had a lot of focus on grains of sand and not enough on the beach, a lot of focus on individual trees and not enough on the forest. Given the times we were living in and the expectations of our communities, that those of us who were privileged to be students, there is an expectation that we would show up in these places and spaces and prepare ourselves to be of service for the greater good and to crack it open for those who were not here. And I did not find myself being prepared in those ways. So I was in the process of actually shifting out of that department into community organization, social work, so that when I lost through the participation in the boycott and the strike that jumped off in '69, second semester, that was a major, major loss for me. However, the loss of Willie and Liberty, the opportunity to get a undergrad degree from this place is part of what fired me up over all these years to do the work that I do in the way that I do it. Because we are standing on shoulders of young people who came here and sacrificed greatly. These are two, and I'm so grateful that they were able to come back, because it wasn't safe for them to come back the first time. And there are some who lost their lives in the despair because we had great hopes and expectations. We were living in a time that there was an expectation, if we just put in sacrifice, that somehow we would move the needle. And Kenny Williamson is another one that I remember who was phenomenally brilliant and lost through the despair. But there are others. There are others. We are standing on shoulders, good people, of folks. We don't have their names, but we got these two names right here. Okay? Just know that. And there's an expectation that those of us who are here now, that there are folks who are going to be standing on our shoulders. So
you can't leave out John. John, he came at a time when he was like a breath of fresh air. He stood out because we were doing it and we didn't always have the numbers. But one thing I can say is that whenever there was a crisis or something like that, the black students came together.
We rise up.
They rose up. But John was one of the hard workers that came later on, and we were like, whew, we got another one. We was glad for John, because John could get on TV and just burn them. He could articulate and demonstrate and have people pulling out handkerchiefs, wiping their head, saying, when is this boy going to get off this stage?
There was also a great sense of harmony amongst the organizers of the strike. Whatever disputes we had, we hashed them out. But we also, to some degree, for some of us, it was as if we also had not a segregated college, but a parallel college, because we knew that we could count on, theoretically, at least the 1,000 other black people who were there just like us. And so it was almost as if we had another college. And we also many of us became lifelong friends, interacted with each other. I certainly hope that occurs amongst the black students that I see here today. And just think about it, 50 years from now will be 2069. Will you be there?
So as you all mentioned before, kind of laying this groundwork that you all did in preparation for the strike and even during, as well as in community with one another on campus. What did this look like for white students who may have wanted to participate in the strike or just kind of preparation for it? What did this look like for you all?
We welcomed it. We needed their support. I mean, we couldn't have done it without them. You know, there were many, many times. Libby was describing earlier today when a National Guardman came at her with a baton. You know, and she was wrestling on one end, he was wrestling on the other, and she slipped, and she thought she was gone. And it was students that saved her. You know, I was in a demonstration working with the anti-war movement, and they came in, and I was like, they was coming right at me. I was at the front, and it was a white student that pulled me back. You know, like that. So we always had that type of support from the liberals, the left, like that. Because, like I said, even though there was this implicit racism, there was a lot of people. I came here because I heard that Wisconsin was a progressive school, and there were progressive people here, you know. But it was disappointing because there wasn't enough of it. But, you know, so we did have those supporters and those allies. And Libby can really describe it because the way we organized the strike, we kept them confused. We had people that were going to be marchers, 5 people. And then we each had a group, and we'd take a group here and a group there, and we had them running every which way. But
Kept them moving.
she can describe how we went into the dorms and talked to the people, and they responded.
They did, and that it was actually surprising to me, but we knew we had to recruit people, and I mean, to get thousands of students to walk out, you need people with you to shut down the university. And I remember going into the dorms and thinking, how am I going to explain it? How am I going to talk to these people? And they listened. They actually did listen, and we talked about it, and we had discussion, and to my big surprise, the next day, thousands of people came out. So, I mean, we did the work that helped to explain it so that people could understand, and they realized that our cause was righteous, and they did show up, and they put up a good fight with us. There were also lots of organizations on campus, lots of activist organizations who were very involved in the anti-war movement at the time, and we had been supportive of them, and they in turn became supportive of us. I remember one time going, I think it was the night before the big first day of the strike, and I was assigned to go to a meeting of all the SDS and the Young Dems and anti-war movement people to explain what our strategy was. And so I was invited to the meeting, and I basically told them what we were planning to do. And I thought it was a closed meeting. Come to find out, it was headlines in all the papers the next morning. So I thought I had blown the whole thing. Here I was, told them everything that was going to happen. That was a bit surprising because I had depended on the activists to know that, we weren't supposed to be having press or anybody outside of the groups that were going to be involved at the meeting. But it turned out it didn't destroy everything. It still went off. But I was really scared when I realized I had made a big mistake by not checking to see who was in the room. That was another, but we were working together. There was a sense that there were groups that were very supportive of us, and we in turn supported them. When they made a call for the anti-war demonstrations, we were there, and they came to support us, and we could not have done the strike without them. So it's very important to have allies. It's very important to work to develop allies in situations like this where you have, large numbers of people who are not in your direct immediate circle. You have to learn to work with people, and you have to be able to articulate, and that was what we learned, how to articulate the issues so that people could identify and understand.
There's not a lot of angry talk, no bullets, no sticks. We just use the truth and words, Yep.
So as you all mentioned, in having the National Guard come in during the strike, did this change up tactics or strategies for organization, or how did this impact you?
They couldn't keep up with us.
Okay.
We had them going. Baby, we were confident. I mean, we had put in hours and the time, and we had other demonstrations where because there was always informers in the group, I mean, they had informers in the Panthers everywhere, so we knew that. But what we did this time was, like I said, we had these 5 or 6 people. They take a crowd here and a crowd there, and we had them running.
Hit and run.
Go to this building, go to that building. At 9 o'clock, you go here. And then we had people in cars that would go to the group and say, now, you guys leave here and we want you to go there. So we would tell the marshals and stuff like that. So it was well coordinated. John was and John could get up and speak and fire people, and he'd go into the gospel and.
Well, it was to have National Guard on the campus was also on the front to
Right, a lot of
the,
people
you know,
was
to
pissed at that.
many people here in the university,
Yeah.
even those who were not actively participating in the strike. And speaking of people who are not necessarily actively participating in the strike, I recall seeing professors have their classes out on the lawn on Bascom Hill, as opposed to having their classes in their classrooms. This was a support of the strike. And I also remember one time several of us went to the College of Agriculture. Very few. We went to the College of Agriculture, and we wanted to make it difficult for classes to proceed in a very, of course, peaceful way. But we started our chants and our singing, and the response from the agriculture students at that location was just one of silence. It was not one of hostility. Yeah, I'm certain that there were some people who also were offended that our classes are being disrupted, but it was almost as if there was a tacit support coming from that group of students at the agriculture college. So the point being that there were so many different layers of participation, and there were different layers of support, primarily from the African American students, but we also had white support. Both directly, letters and things of that sort, and indirectly, withdrawing from classes, etc.
Now, shifting to today, given all that you experienced on this campus, all that you went through on this campus, what is it like to be back here 50 years later?
I can't believe I was young once. See all these young people, man. I said, wow, was I one of them? Feels good. When I went to the Cultural Center and Liberty went, and we were so impressed. You know, the wall, they showed us the wall with all the pictures and stuff. And I was saying to myself, now that's what we were talking about. We wanted that. You know, we wanted that. And so that's good. The disappointment, Liberty is very disappointed. The numbers is not what we feel they should be for the university, you know. So we got work to do there, like that. And my hope is that we have continuity, you know, because as, you know, you have fathers and you have uncles and you have grandfathers and great-grandfathers. You have continuity, you have time, it goes on. And you guys are an extension of us, and then now you have to extend it. And so these are some of the things that I've been thinking about while I've been here. Yeah. But overall, my impression is good. You know, I think you're a lovely group of people. You know, I wish I was one of you.
We were here a couple of us, Willie and I were here last year at another event, and some of us took tours over the campus. And I remember feeling, I was concerned that some of the black students appeared to be isolated. I never saw more than one black student, I just saw one black student. Or, you know, they were all individuals. I would never see clusters, whereas I would look and I would see other groups, and there were clusters, 2 here, 3 there, or whatever. And just looking at that, and then I said, well, okay, this is a completely different age, and maybe people in general are isolated. Perhaps that's a factor, but my concern was for the African American students. I just don't want them to feel, one, that they don't belong here. You know, that they're here on some special whatever. No, you're not here. You belong here. You have the rights to be here.
Right.
You know, and not that they not be isolated. And that, as Willie said, they also built upon whatever legacy that we were fortunate enough to give to you, so that your kids and other generations, and maybe 50 years later, we can have a definite improvement here at the University of Wisconsin.
But I have to say the welcome has been wonderful. Very, very wonderful. Everybody's been very kind to us, and it's just an honor. It's an honor to see you all doing what you do and to be invited back, and I'm very thankful for you all. And just keep on keeping on. That's it. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. You just got to keep on. And obviously, you have a lot of unity here, and, you know, I looking at all your T-shirts and your outfits and everything. It reminds me of, we had a little subgroup. I don't know if anybody knows about that. That was it.
I just knew about it. I
Remind me of that.
Yeah, so you all
Parades
remind
and
us
all
of that. We were like the little core group that kind of,
Pushed it.
kind of were under the undercurrent. And you guys got a large whopping doozy way you see it looks like to me, so
Yeah.
that's
But-
really good.
Don't feel marginalized at all. I mean, and hold your heads up high and have that commitment to yourself, have that light shine, and articulate who you are. You know, articulate the values that you have and believe in them.
If I may just add one other thing, because earlier we were talking and we were saying what some of the things you may have missed. And one of the things that I may have missed is that I was made aware of the full resources of the university. We had counseling sessions and all, but it was never really broken down that, let's say, in the music department, you have your chorus, you also have your orchestra, you have your this, you have your that. If you want to be a metallurgist, you can do this or that. It was never, of course, all of these things were in the catalog. Remember catalog? No, you may not remember catalog. But in those days, we actually had to haul around these big books and look through the catalogs. Now, it might have been in the catalogs. Nevertheless, it also needed the reinforcement. So I would just encourage all of you to just to just be aware of the breadth. This is a great university, as you know. The great the breadth of opportunities that are available to you here, you know, and sometimes go a little bit out of your own area. Sometimes just for the sheer fun of it. Take some course in something that's not going to result in you getting a job or whatever. You're doing it just for your own intellectual improvement.
Good advice.
As the legacy of the strike continues and clearly lives on today, what impact did the strike have on you, your personal lives, and your careers?
Well, it made me a doer. It made me feel that I could go into various situations and overcome things. I could be a problem solver. I had a lot of wonderful years as a drug rehabilitation counselor. I didn't have a background in terms of the university, but I talked my way into it and got family connections to help me out. But that experience at Wisconsin really enabled me to relate to people and to be creative. You know, even in whatever field I was in, I always managed to push it and create something that was me in that job and stuff like that. When I went into the mortgage thing in Chicago, I created a group management situation. I could recruit my own mortgage people at the company I was with, and I could train people, and I did a lot of things for first-time home buyers and stuff like that. When I went in drug rehabilitation, we not only dealt with people personally, but we set up programs at the time to do GEDs, to do education, you know, to do social things like that. So Wisconsin gave me that spirit to hang in there, to feel good that I was a doer and a problem solver.
I think for me, what working on the strike and working up to the strike and organizing here taught me is that hard work and coming together as a team to work together is a very important lesson to have learned, because it served me for the rest of my life, basically. I recognize that by working really, really hard at something, you can accomplish your goals. You may not get to it easily, and you may not get to it in the time that you would hope, but eventually, by working at it, it pays off. And so I felt like we learned that lesson. We just dug in and we did the work that it took. And so it's not exactly the lesson that you necessarily expect to get at a university. I can't say It was part of the course, but it was, for me, something that stuck with me the rest of my life, that, it takes hard work to accomplish real things, real serious, important goals. And we learned how to do it. We practiced it. We practiced meeting. We practiced consensus building. We practiced working together, teamwork, and all those articulation, learning to understand issues, learning to articulate the issues, and to figure out how to get things that you need when you realize what your needs are. So, and how to work with other people, and engender support. So those are great lessons I took away, and I've applied them for the rest of my life, and I'm thankful for that. They asked me, well, what did you study at the University of Wisconsin? And all I could think of, I studied revolution, and that was it. And that was it. That was it. So thank you, UW, for that education.
However, that education came on your backs, and that's the part that troubles me. And so how can we have the kind of life-changing learning and development without it taking a toll? Baptisms by fire, especially when you color outside the lines and go beyond the mainstream conventional path that is sort of laid out for us. And I think it's important to stay centered and grounded in a higher vision that's beyond just self. And that, too, often puts you in the crosshairs of challenge. For me, the strike and what came before the strike, because, again, I said I was at a historically black college, the first black college in the U.S. that was black-owned and organized, Wilberforce University. I went to stateside, which is Central State University, and there was church side. So in the 50s, there was a split between church and state. Our black college, my first exposure to the National Guard came at Central State University in 1967. That was my loss of innocence and belief in the greater good, folks doing right. And so when I came to Wisconsin, I had that in my consciousness. And so Wisconsin was a very life-changing experience for the reasons that I've already mentioned, witnessing what was happening to those who had been struggling and laying the foundation that I benefited from coming in 68 and then joining the strike. I mean, so I'm just saying, for me, deep in my soul, there is a belief that we each must lift as we climb. Yes. It's not just about us individually, rising up and coming grand.
Right.
And that was an expectation that I came with, not only because of coming from the school I came from, but also because that was the water, socio-political water that we were swimming in. There was an expectation that we will make a difference wherever we find ourselves planted. And that's what I've tried to pass on to whoever crosses my path over the course of these 50 years. And I don't say it hard, but I try to share it and to live it and to radiate it. And so for me, Central State University, and further reinforced and deepened by my experience here, has been lift as we climb. There's no neutral place to stand in the face of injustice. No neutral place to stand. So silence implies cosign. So what is it that we can say and do? Where will we find ourselves given whatever resources we might have at our disposal? Because bystander behavior is not okay. And so that for me is at the heart of what has been my 50-year walk here, jump-started by the walk at Central State University. That is my heart, by the way. Yes.
So I guess just kind of wrapping up at least this moderated portion of the evening. How do you all feel in regards to the changes that have been made on campus? And then kind of adding a little bit of nuance to that, what would be your advice that you could issue out to students now who want to continue on making these changes on campus?
My advice would be, and I think one of the things that we could have done a little better was we did try to involve the greater Madison community. Liberty and I would go to church on the south side, and we were peripherally involved with the Urban League. We spent one summer working on the south side of Madison with the young people. We set up a White House where we taught Black history and stuff to the youngins, you know. So my advice would be that whatever you do on the campus, also try to get the community involved in it as well, because this is a public institution and they can write to the state legislature, they can write to the Board of Regents and force them to respond, you know. So use the greater community too, because they'll be there for you. They look up to you, you're college students, you're the next generation. So go out and speak to them if you have an issue, you know. Request to speak to their congregation, request to have the press come in, stuff like that.
Absolutely. Can you repeat the question again? There was some part of it that I wanted to respond to, but I can't remember the full question.
So how did you all feel about the changes that have been made?
Right. Thank you. Well, I'm very encouraged that the African American Studies Department is here and still functioning. Yay! Thank you.
And it is a department, not a program, not a collection of courses. It is a department, and the demands were clear on that. That's die casting. A lot of other places just got a program or a collection of courses. We have a department.
I want to hear
that
more
grants
about
degrees.
Thank you. And I mean, it's just really, really rewarding to come back and know that that department is still functioning. There was a young man by the name of Cornelius Gilbert. You all know Cornelius? Huh? Okay. Hey, Cornelius. Oh, he was wonderful, and he did his dissertation all about the work that we did back in the day, but I was just so thrilled to know that, you know, he was getting his degree at the African American Studies Department, and it's just really, really an honor to know that that's still happening. So in that way, I think we're very encouraged. On the other major demand about recruiting students, there's still a lot of work to be done. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but it's somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000 students you have? No? Who knows what the Black population is here at this university? How much? 1,500. Okay,
Is that
so
6%
that's
of the
nowhere near.
population?
That's nowhere near the percentage of the Black population of Wisconsin, and we know it's nowhere near of the Black population of the country. So, you know, a state school, a school that gets its money from the community, people paying taxes, that school should represent the population of that state, if not the nation. So there is a lot of work to be done in that regard, and I think that's where your efforts should focus right now, because it's still a huge problem. I mean, we have wonderful HBCUs, and they are growing and they're strong, and I encourage that, but we still need to have Universities of Wisconsin servicing the community. You all need to, you know, to push on that, and I would highly encourage, and anything we can do to support you on that, please, you know, feel free to ask, because I just think that's how we solve some of our problems. We need to get in school, we need to talk about our issues, we need to think about what it is we have to do to solve our problems as a community and the country and change the world, be the change that we want to see. We have, you know, these are places where that can happen. And so in that respect, I feel like my advice to you and my concern is that student recruitment is a big, big thing, and not just African American, people of color in general. We need to be represented on all the campuses across this nation, and we need to be talking about what it is that we need to do to work on our problems, work on, So go at it. Go at it. That's all I can say. Keep on working. It really is hard work. It really is, but it's important work, and we just got to keep pushing. Got to keep on keeping on.
I would also like to acknowledge Afro-American Studies because but for that department, I would not be sitting here because I was not able to come back after that first year when I lost my fellowship, and I had to get rid of my incompletes and all the mess that was caused in my transcript by my participation. And so I worked in California and got rid of my incompletes through UC Berkeley, working with community organizers that were savvy about higher education. So when I came back to my department, they said to me, "We hope you find something," because that was often the way in which those of us who had been participants would no longer be able to show up. And because I was a grad student, I was privileged. Even though I was blocked, the Afro-American Studies department existed, and they needed teaching assistants. I became a teaching assistant in Afro-American Studies. And when they looked up and still saw me like, but our undergrads did not have that option. Again, bringing it back to on whose shoulders we stand, because when they were blocked from financial aid, that was it. And I think that might have been the experience of some folk over there, okay? So I'm just saying, just remember the sacrifices folks have made and the expectation, given that the baton is in our hands now. Do your part, let us do our part for the greater good of those who are yet to come, in spite of whatever, in spite of whatever.
All right. All right.
On that note,
Let's give our moderators a round of applause. Our panelists. We'd like to shift gears a little bit and kind of transition into a dialogue. So if we could have the lights brought up a little bit. We wanted to know if any of you had questions for students here now. So if you want to respond to a question, feel free to raise your hand and we'll point to you. But if you all have any questions, that would be...
I'd just like to hear from students about what's going on, what they feel like. Turn some of those same questions around to you all, and what is it like to be a student here now? I'd love to hear that.
So, excuse me, okay, so I'll stand up. So I came here on an arts and scholarship, first wave to be specific. A lot of sentiments, especially in the earlier discussion of the panel, about being told that you're not supposed to be here because you are on scholarship. There's a lot of things that me and my cohort members and just general program has faced. But I think mainly like the questions that stuck out have been always the questions of what has changed. And I think in our current position that we do have a fearless bunch in our student body that will go out, make protests, do these things. Me being one of those people, but I see that from the university we're always met with some kind of force or some kind of kickback. And just recently, probably like 2 years ago, we know that the protest bill was introduced. And I think that that has been a key part in why maybe some protests have slowed down, is because they're scared of suspension and then eventually expulsion. I had a meeting with some of the football players. They stated, they couldn't say exactly who, but they stated that some of their coaches said that if you kneel, this was during the Kaepernick situation, that if you kneel, that don't bite the hand that feeds you, you will be kicked off the team or you will not play. So these are a lot of things that we have. When we sparked the Real UW, which I felt was a large success, BET, Huffington Post, Blavity, all these articles, they reported on it. Real UW, just in a nutshell, is where we involved the whole community to basically express themselves through art. Visual art, anything we connected with, the Chazen, which is the museum here on campus. They allowed us a beautiful area and platform to showcase that. even that was so much kickback from the university of trying to navigate those things. And for then afterwards for the art to be in a way stolen and then archived in their own personal buildings and act like that it was the get-go, that they were on board with us all along, I feel like is one huge big cover-up. So I guess like those are like my answer to those questions. And I guess like in a dialogue sense, I know that y'all prevailed and y'all pushed through adversity. And I think it takes a level of determination, it takes a level of courage to do what you do. And I think my main question would be just how do we persevere in the same way that y'all did now?
Through commitment. You got to be committed, like I keep mentioning, committed to the truth. You understand that there is a truth there and an fairness there. So you have to be committed to resolving that. And yes, there's always going to be pushback, and there always was pushback. I mean, when you look at the history of this country, and there's always been division. But, I mean, that doesn't mean that you don't advocate for yourself and try to get other people on your side. And that's what you do. And that's what America is all about, doing that. I mean, it goes all the way back from the very beginning. So when you have something, keep at it. Keep at it, organize in the sense that you will get other people involved, get a petition, start with a petition, find out who else is, feel like you, hold meetings on it, strategize, and go forward from there in terms of getting the community involved and getting other people involved. Because I'm sure a lot of other people here would feel the unfairness of it. I did. So that's what you do. You get and organize and push forward like that.
I think also you have to think about having a grand issue. The grander the issue is, it might be a little bit easier to organize and to get a sustained commitment to a grand issue. If you're dealing with the minutiae of an issue, well, they took our artwork, they put our artwork here, we don't want our artwork here, this isn't, that may not necessarily be compelling enough to get people to actually come together and to support it. But if you have a grand issue, for example, when we were talking, our strike was very specific. We had the 13 demands. One of our biggest demands is we want a Black Studies department here on this campus. That's the grand issue. It's also connected to the grand issue that other colleges were also experiencing as an example. So my advice to you would be, when you're going up against a powerful institution, make the issue as grand as you can possibly make the issue. That may attract more people, and you may be able to get a sustained support because of the grandeur of the issue. Don't make it so minute.
And the thing is, you may start with where you are, with the things you have purpose and passion around, and even though it may start small, walking out in the world and communing with others,
Exactly.
you might find ways to crosswalk our
Exactly.
individual issues to then make it a more grand issue. Otherwise, we sometimes get paralyzed waiting for the big way, and we do nothing in the interim. So remain committed to progressive outcomes without being attached to outcomes over which you have not control. And so, again, there's no neutral place to stand in the face of disparity and injustice. So work it wherever you find yourself, and then try to grow it by learning how to speak into the listening of the folks around us. Too many of us, by default, speak into our own speaking, speak into the listening of our homies. But to do this work for the greater good, we need to learn how to do boundary spanning and yet still remain centered and grounded in what matters to us.
Exactly.
It's a gyroscope action, in case y'all hadn't heard of gyroscopes. As long as that center wheel is spinning, it doesn't matter where you throw a gyroscope, where it finds itself, it will find its way back home. So remain centered and grounded. Roots and wings sound like a contradiction, but it ain't. Roots, centered and grounded, and yet have wings to soar. to boundary span to do the work for the greater good. We are the ones. We all been waiting for, good folk. Let's get busy with it.
All right.
That's a good question. Those are great questions. Stay committed.
Stay committed. And
Stay
also,
committed.
it sounds like, I'm looking at our demands from way back when, and I'm looking at number 5. It says that amnesty, defined as no reprisal or
That did not happen.
chastisement, be given all students who participate in boycotts or other such
See, you make it
actions
big like that.
in reference to our demands. So we were asking for that then. I'm sorry, I don't know if you could hear me if I turned. But anyway, it sounds like that's a demand that needs to continually be a demand.
See, the truth is that protest is a part of American history. This country was founded on protest. We have the tradition of
right
Henry
to do
David Thoreau and this one and that one. So you embed yourself and you go in that direction and you articulate yourself in that direction. Why should you be harassed because you speak out? You know, and that's the bigger issue. You know, I'm an artist and art should be free.
Right.
It should be free, and you make it big like that. But stay committed and get other people involved with you, you know. But don't give up on it.
Thank you.
Yes, we can take another question.
As a UW freshman, I was involved in the Black Strike, and
Cool.
All right.
I came from
Thank you.
right from the cornfields, Stoughton, Wisconsin, down the road. I don't think at the time there was one black family in Stoughton.
Right.
I had gotten radicalized around the Vietnam War issue, and so I came to campus and we had an anti-ROTC demonstration, and then Nixon got elected, and we knew that the war was going to escalate, and then I was in the periphery of the Students for Democratic Society. I didn't know Mike Rosen or John Milrod or the people who worked with you all, but I just went to meetings and didn't really understand what was going on. But the Black Strike started, and I remember there was that big meeting in Great Hall, and then people poured out of Great Hall and marched up the hill. It's in the movie The War at Home.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, you know, the strike went on for a couple of days and it just wasn't taking hold the way that it needed to take hold. And so the word came out for us SDSers to meet in this theater. And we met in the old Frederick March Theater. Frederick March's name, of course, has been tainted by association with, lately, I guess, with the Klan or the Klan fraternity. But anyway, we met here very early in the one morning, on a weekday morning, and we were told that we were going to go up and blockade the buildings on Bascom Hill. And I had never done anything like that, and it was exciting, but it was pretty scary, you know, to break the law like that. And they gave us armbands, and we crept out, and we went up Bascom, and we got in the doorways, and we stood in the schoolhouse door, you know, in the best sense of the word, and no students, faculty, administrators, maintenance were going to be allowed to go in, and there were some confrontations. You'll see a couple of them in the War at Home. And that afternoon, they called the Madison cops, and people, the Madison cops came and ran us off of Bascom, but the next day, there were 5,000 students demonstrating. People remembered how the police had come in October '67 and beat up the
Dow
pacifist,
demonstration, right.
the pacifist people who were sitting in against Dow Chemical, the
Right.
makers of napalm. And so all of the educational work that you all did to lay the seeds of this germinated at that moment. 5,000 students. I mean, we were blockading the entrances to all the buildings on the liberal arts campus, and the other campus, the A campus, the engineering campus, all that was just another alternate universe, as you mentioned. But they couldn't keep the liberal arts campus open, and at that point, that's why Republican Governor Warren Knowles called the National Guard, and they have the National Guard militarily occupy the campus was a teachable moment, as I'm sure you all realize. It really was the turning point, I think, in
Yeah.
the black stripe.
Yep.
Good analysis.
If I may just say one thing, there are different levels, thank you for, different levels of participation in any protest, and I just want to speak to those people. There's some people who are not necessarily prone to, if there's a protest, to actually put their bodies on the line to march, to hold the banner, and all that other kind of stuff. But there are things that a person can still do in support of a situation, which does not necessarily remind them being out front. Everybody's not going to be out front. Everybody. I remember once Whitney Young came to my high school, and he was talking about the civil rights era, and he was saying that, you know what, he used this analogy. You have in the military, you have the cavalry, whatever that is. You have the
Infantry, whatever.
You know, the 4 levels of military life or whatever. And the point is, he was pointing out that there will be certain people who participate in each of those levels. Each of those levels is indeed important. And my point to you is that there might be some of you who, because of either your own personalities or whatever, you may not be as inclined to be out in the forefront. However, there are ways in which you can be supportive of a situation. And some people would say, just be the best that you can be. Just being your best. Being your best may be a way to actually have an impact on the larger issue that is being confronted.
Excellent point.
And that is calling in instead of calling out. Just because folks ain't doing the way, taking the path that one might think is the right way. They have a different way. And too often, what pained me greatly was junior oppressor action. In other words, if they ain't doing it the way the heavy-duty progressives say do it, then you a betrayer. So call in, not calling out, because if we are busy taking each other out like the gladiators, gladiators in the arena fighting it out, but who's sitting up in the stands sipping mint juleps as we take each other out? And whoever's left standing will be taken out. So as the fury rises in you or in us, because someone is not doing it the way that is orchestrated, please back away and think, call in, not calling out. And that energy can be better invested for the greater good of whoever is the big target, not the folks nearby.
Just
We too often
piggybacking
take
off
each
of
other
those
out.
2 things.
Huh?
Just piggybacking off of this. This is why you ask people to do petitions. This is why you get into the community, because they will call, like she says, call. They could call the state legislators, they could call the Board of Regents, because this is a public institution. So that way you can utilize the support of the greater community. You know, and they may not get out on the picket line, but then they could call in.
And I
So
didn't mean
those are
call in on the
concrete-
phone, I mean just give
Yeah.
everyone space to be human.
Right.
And to do the right thing without us being judgmental and standing in judgment of. There's enough work for all of us to do for the greater good.
So in the Black Cultural Center, on the timeline, there's a photo of one of the leaders of the Black Students Alliance and a picture of Fred Hampton, which is a former leader of the Black Panther Party. Can you all sort of speak to was the involvement or whether the collaboration with the Black Panther Party coming to campus for the Black Student Strike, or clarify some things, or?
Yeah, the word got out that there was an organization here of students that was pretty sophisticated. So we had the Black Panthers in Milwaukee that helped. First of all, we created a gun club. We got licensed, we created a gun club, and we had them to help us purchase guns, and we would practice at a rock quarry, okay? And so that was one of the ways that established a relationship with them. And then secondly, it's just the word that got out that there was a really sophisticated group at the University of Wisconsin. So Fred Hampton, he came up to speak, as we did have a lot of people from SNCC. I think Stokely Carmichael came up here at one point to
San
speak.
Francisco State folks came.
Yeah, people from the San Francisco State and the West Coast Panthers, some people that were on the periphery of them. So that was how that happened. We didn't have any official
Right.
connection with the
Right.
Black Panthers, but we were interested in hearing what they had, and they were tight. The Black Panthers were really, really tight. The unfortunate thing was the fact that the federal government, Hoover, infiltrated them and did a number on them. We had the police here, and we had infiltration here, but we were always on the alert for that.
And that was part of our education. That was how we, got people to come and help share ideas and thoughts about how to do things. So they were part of that. There's a hand over there.
Aisha.
Hello, my name is Aisha. I'm a sophomore here at UW-Madison. I thank you guys all for your work. I think I heard a lot about sacrifice, and I heard a lot about like pushing our limits. And because I'm a scholarship student, I think about my work all the time and what consequences it's faced and like what I am willing to lose. But sometimes there's a lot of me that I'm not willing to lose. So a lot of times my mental health is on the line, and I go into the Black Cultural Center a lot to relieve all of the stress I feel in classes, a lot of the work that I put in at my job, and there are Black folks in the Black Cultural Center who will listen to me, but they are facing all of the things that I am too because they're Black on this campus. So sometimes I'm wondering, like, where is the limit? Where do we stop sacrificing ourselves? That yes, we're always thinking to the future and we're always thinking for the greater good, but we as human beings have limits, right? In what we can put ourselves in, what situations we are willing to lose everything. Right? And there are times on this campus where I was willing to do something and lose my scholarship and have to tell my mom I'm coming back home. But sometimes when I feel so close, it feels like I'm gonna lose this thing that I worked so hard for. So like, how do we balance ourselves, right?
Just do what you can. I wouldn't try to lose anything. But do what you can and realize that there is a community, as you seem to already realize that. So, and try to navigate, we were few in the beginning. So, I mean, we became targets because we were the first, but the people that came after us with greater numbers, they were less of a target than we were. So, I mean, don't try to just sacrifice yourself like that. Realize that it's a long, long process. Life is long. It should be long for you. So try to live it and stay in there.
Isha, let me just say this. As a child of the civil rights movement and the Black liberation struggle, many in my cohort, the meta message to us is self-care is selfish and self-indulgent. At 72 years old now, I am grateful to still be relatively upright with a reasonable piece of a sound mind and body. But there are many who are no longer with us either physically, emotionally, or spiritually because we thought that if we sacrificed our all, somehow we would move the needle. But there's no guarantee that the needle, even if it moves, that it won't backtrack. And so part of where I am now in this life is recognizing that self-care is not self-indulgent. It is self-preservation, and sustainability is an act of political warfare, as Audre Lorde says. So each of us need to be mindfully monitoring as we walk in the world, what do we need to sustain ourselves? Because too many of us ran on fumes and then wound up collapsing because we were not monitoring. And so that's part of what I'm trying to do in this orbit of the university with folks who are coming up. Monitor what it takes to sustain you, because actually it redounds to the benefit of the status quo if you crash and burn, if you leave here. So sacrifice, yes, but with savvy, because it's about staying here long enough wherever here is to make a difference for the greater good. So it is a strategic moving about for the greater good, not just co-signing BS, but I'm just saying there's something in between, you know, just opportunistically looking out for self and trying to make it open for a greater good. So that's.
I would add that just a person has to know what his or her own resources are.
Right.
And how much resources one can expend in any area. And it's also important to note that in any protest movement, there will be times in which one is intensely involved, but if it gets to the point where one's sanity is compromised, then at that point, perhaps one may need to withdraw or take a back seat or channel the involvement into some other area which is not as stressful. We don't want you to lose your scholarship over these situations here. So we want you to maintain your scholarship, graduate from the University of Wisconsin, and then proceed to make your contributions in the larger world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Another historical question. I'm looking at demand number 12 where it mentions the Oshkosh students. What impact, if any, did the expulsion of the Oshkosh 94 in January have on you and your cause?
It helped, it precipitated, it was persistent, you know, it was something that stimulated us acting, you know. I went up there, I don't know.
A group of us went up there.
We went up to the campus
support them.
to support them, and that was something, a spark, you know, and a lot of the other things were from the past, but the Oshkosh was something that was in '69, and that pushed us forward.
And they did get reinstated. If that's correct. Did they? I think they did. Was it a year later? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't recall that, but that was definitely a concern of ours and something that we wanted to be supportive of. And I remember going up there late at night,
Oh, yeah.
driving up, and they were in jail. They had all been arrested. And I remember the minute we hit Oshkosh, we were followed by a car, and there were guns sticking out of all the windows. And they followed us all around Oshkosh, just, you know, sending a message, you know, we know you're here, and we know what you're here for. And we went to the police station, and I don't remember exactly what came out of that encounter, but I think our main concern was letting the folks know in Oshkosh that there were people watching,
Right.
that we were here, we were in support, and we
Right.
weren't going to just let this go by. We knew what was going on.
Right.
And so the fact that we stuck, you know, together, we didn't know any of these students. We didn't know any of them, but we heard about it and we immediately responded to the call, and I think that was important for them to know, and it was also important for us because we knew that if
Could be
the same
us.
thing happened to us, that they would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was kind of like we were working as a network together and being supportive of one another, and sorry that took a year for them to get reinstated, but at least it happened, and I think that was something that we thought important enough to put in the demands.
We have time for one more question. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, my voice is kind of gone. But first of all, thank you for all the work that you've done, your sacrifice. You lost them in your shoulders, so I just want to say I appreciate it. But like I've done campus-based organizing and community-based organizing here in Madison. I work with a group called Freedom Inc.
Could you say that name again?
Freedom Inc.
Okay, Freedom Inc. Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about like any relationship between like campus organizing and community-based organizing in the '60s? Is this at all? Because I find today that like we circumscribe ourselves to campus-based issues as if they're not directly connected to the issues that Black people are facing right here in Madison. So we can talk about sort of that relationship or that connection or any work that you all did, like organizing around specific issues with Black people in Madison.
Well,
Want to go?
it was limited, you know, what we did. Basically, we just tried to have a relationship and we were there. We didn't get in deep with it. Like I said, that I was asked to be on the board of directors of the Urban League. I went to a few meetings. We went to the churches. Our biggest effort was directed toward the youth. In one summer, there was a guy who was a student here. He was an upperclassman, and he was also from Madison. His name was Eugene Parks.
Yes.
And he had gotten funds to do organizing around issues of civil rights. And it was white students and black students, but we said, well, we feel that the black students should go into the black community and the white students should go into the white communities, because the problem existed in both communities. It just didn't exist in the black. So why should you just want to go in the black? Why don't you go into the whites and talk to them? So our job was, we worked with the youth, you know, and it was just like one summer. And it was a real positive response. You know, they appreciated the fact that there were college students coming in, and we did history, and it was male and female involvement. But overall, I would just say that community work is slow. You know, it's knocking on doors. It's because Liberty came from community organization, and I was a community organizer as a young person. I was trained at the University of Wisconsin, you know,
Chicago.
and University of Chicago, you know, on the south side of Chicago to do organizing work. And it's knocking on doors, finding out what, if you don't know the issue, if you just want to go up, but it's finding out what the issues are important to the community and organizing around that and getting few numbers and getting them together and keeping them meeting and stuff like that. But community organizing is slow. You know, it's never anything that happens instantaneously unless there's a major crisis or something. But you can deal with that easier if you've talked to people in the community, if you've knocked on the doors and related to people and whatnot.
I think also just relationship building is really critical. You want to build a relationship with the black community here, or any members of the community that, you know, you want to be supportive of, and vice versa. I felt like the community was very happy to have us when we went. We spent a summer working in the community, and we also kept up that relationship, not just that summer, but we worked hard to establish ourselves as connected. We didn't want to feel that we were just here and there was no connection, and we felt like the university had no connection whatsoever. They didn't even recognize there was a South Madison, really, from our understanding. And so we made that effort, and I felt like it paid off, because when we were going through our strike, they understood. They understood, and they were supportive. You know, some of the leaders of the community made it known that they were with us. And that was just important. It wasn't a powerful impact, and we didn't have a powerful impact on the community, but I think relationship building is something that we need to do more of in general. Students in general need to be more connected to the communities that they sit in when they're there. So I encourage that, you know, if you're doing work in South Madison or in Madison, wherever, continue, because we all need to be a part of this university. It's a community space, and the more people feel comfortable coming in and out, having events that community members may be invited to and going to their events, that really builds a bond that's very critical for us as a community to keep on moving and developing and growing.
Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. We'd like to thank our panelists, Wahid, Liberty, John, Hazel.
Thank you all for coming out.